What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Imagine nearly drowning at a 5-star Turkish resort while trying to flex as the warlord of a brutal authoritarian regime. That's not a bad punchline or a joke, it is reportedly what happened to Ramzan Kadyrov over the weekend, the Chechen strongman whose life has spiraled from TikTok propaganda reels to whispered rumors of kidney failure and coma vacations. According to Turkish media, Kadyrov was dragged from the water unconsciousness, wheezing his last few breaths not on a battlefield or a podium, but in bedroom. The preferred sunspot for the very few elites he claims to despise so much. And yet, this is where he went himself. The man who built an empire on torture, fear and Instagram filters nearly died under a summer sun, not because of a NATO drone or a poisoned small umbrella cocktail decoration, but because his body finally said, "That's it, I'm out of here." But don't get too excited, he is still alive, barely, reportedly even stable, and while there is still no word from the Kremlin or Grozny's megaphone ministers, one thing is obvious: the myth of Kadyrov's invincibility is dissolving faster than his liver. What's left is a bloated shadow of a man clinging to a throne built on silence, subsidies and systematic terror. And as he fades, the question is not just who comes next, it is how the vacuum he leaves behind could unravel a fragile peace Moscow paid billions to preserve. So guys, buckle in, because today we are diving into the not-so-royal implosion of Russia's favorite medieval vassal, the grotesque theater of his family's succession circus, the cancelled war parades that signal a regime on the edge, and how it's all tangled up in Putin's crumbling empire. You would think someone as paranoid as Kadyrov, who reportedly surrounds himself with guards even in the bathroom, would avoid dipping into the foreign waters. But no. According to Turkish reports, he went for a casual swim in bedroom and nearly did not come out. Witnesses say he lost consciousness, choked, and had to be pulled out by hotel staff and Coast Guard officers. That's right, the feared Lion of the Caucasus, self-proclaimed obviously, was saved not by his elite security detail, but not by Allah, certainly not by Putin, but by resort workers trained to deal with sunburned tourists who fall asleep drunk on the sand and, definitely, as you can see, not near the dictators. Of course, nobody from the Russian or Chechen government has confirmed any of this, which only makes the real situation to be possibly even worse for Ramzan. Kadyrov's public appearances have already been mysteriously sparse for over a year. His social media, once overflowing with selfies and grandiose proclamations, has been reduced to just recycled, retweeted, reshared clips, brief remarks and painfully staged videos in which he looks more embalmed than alive, trying to prove that, guys, I'm all well. Last year he tried to silence the rumors with a video of himself doing jumping jacks, and this year, just a cryptic message about death being part of life, while he strolls in slow motion, wearing a hoodie like a terminally ill patient trying to just play tough and say that, guys, don't worry, everything's good. Meanwhile, anonymous sources have been feeding the press details about the possible pancreatic necrosis diagnosis, dialysis treatment, and prolonged stays at a private clinic owned by, get this, his own wife. Yes, even his recovery has been privatized and monopolized. The man whose regime erased hospitals, doctors and tortured the press is now reportedly clinging to life in a luxury clinic built with state funds and family favors. It is, if you think about it, kind of even poetic, isn't it? As for now, it is too early to make assumptions without trying to sound too much like a yellow press, but what we can do is to give brief overview of his career, if you can call it this way, with more focus on his most recent years. Let's talk about it in our next chapter, guys. Let's not forget what Kadyrov's regime became in its final years. A grotesque parody of militarism, more concerned with Instagram followers than battlefield success. Chechnya was famously exempted from the national mobilization following the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. But that did not stop Kadyrov from sending his so-called TikTok battalions, soldiers who were more interested in choreographed war videos than actual combat. Their contribution to the war effort was mostly performative, I mean, you all seen the videos, right? While Ukrainian forces shelled Russian logistics hubs and airfields, the Kadyrovцы posed with drone parts, most likely even their own, recorded slow-motion clips firing into the air, and just fought with the knives against the bushes. Russia's military veterans hated them, the professional army considered them a joke, let alone the people, but the Kremlins did not care. Kadyrov's value was never about battlefield results, it was about perception, about control, about the illusion of stability in a region that could explode at any moment. And yet, even that illusion is cracking. The younger generation of Chechens may dress in camo and chant war songs, but they also grew up online. Chechnya, this country, this region does have access to the internet, believe it or not. They have seen how their peers in Moscow live. They know what Adam Kadyrov's extravagant weddings look like while they scrub by the remains. And they have noticed that while the war machine demands sacrifice, it never demands it from the Kadyrov family. Meanwhile, journalists in Kursk are asking why Chechnya gets 15 times more federal funding than their own war-scarred region. I mean, Kursk is literally affected, and then there's Chechnya far from any activities, and yet. Regular Russians are starting to question why their tax money is bankrolling a private army in a region exempt even from the draft. And officials in Moscow are quietly leaking rumors about Adam Telemkhanov and Alaudinov, not to endorse them, but to remind Ramzan Kadyrov that he is not untouchable. Kadyrov has always been a paradox, a man who ruled with brutality, but styled himself as a holy warrior, a cultural patriarch, and an Instagram motivational speaker. He gave himself many titles, all of them once again self-proclaimed. Father of the nation, defender of the faith, Putin's most loyal foot soldier. But under the beards and bulletproof vests was always a fragile man who owed everything to one thing, Putin's indulgence. Without that, he's just another warlord with a bloated entourage, a dying cleaver, and a region that only pretends to obey. As soon as money is over, the loyalty is over. Moscow let him get away with torture, polygamy, and tribal politics because he delivered silence in the Caucasus region. But silence bought with blood has a shelf life. And now, with his health failing and his grip slipping, this silence is cracking. Even his theatrical statements about death, which goes as following: only God decides how long we live. Even these have turned into tragicomic memes. People see the shaky hands, they hear the slurred speech, the missing months. Even his supporters whisper, no one believes he is in control anymore. The true ruler of Chechnya today might be his medical chart. And what comes next? That is the Kremlin's nightmare. It is one thing to prop up a loyal tyrant. It is completely another thing to anoint his underage son as a successor and just hope nobody notices. Putin's regime thrives on managed chaos, managed one. But even that has limits. A 17-year-old general in a region shaped by war and blood feuds is not a recipe for stability. It is a Molotov cocktail dressed in Gucci. Let's talk about the potential Chechen successor in our next chapter. So, what happens when the man who ruled Chechnya like a personal medieval estate finally sees the end of it all? Let's be real, this was always going to be messy. For over 2 decades, Ramzan Kadyrov turned a war-torn region into a place of fear. In exchange for brutal loyalty to Moscow, he got unchecked power, federal subsidies, and the Kremlin's full blessing to do whatever he wanted. Extrajudicial killings? Go ahead. Anti-gay purges? No problem. Turn your 17-year-old son into a general? With no military experience, obviously. Sure, why not? Speaking of sons, Ramzan has been busy paving the way for his offsprings to take the throne. And by paving, I mean bulldozing every other legal and moral boundary. His teenage heir, the most probable one, Adam, yes, the same one who just graduated high school, is already the secretary of the Security Council, chief of his father's personal guard, and the proud recipient of multiple military medals he definitely did not earn, yet here they are. Recently married, Adam's wedding was a Kremlin-sanctioned circus, with Putin himself even sending blessings. It was less of a marriage and more of a medieval coronation with better lighting and just better quality cameras, microphones. The Kremlin, of course, has not confirmed any succession plans, because legally Adam is still too young to take power. Russian law, however absurd it sounds, requires governors to be over 30. But, since when has legality mattered in Putin's Russia? Ramzan himself began even ruling Chechnya while he was still in his 20s, with also even Putin's full backing. What's then few decades between the cronies then? But still, it's not a done deal, at least for now. The elite in Grozny is not monolithic, and several other contenders are circling. There is Magomed Daudov, infamous for leading the anti-gay crackdown, and then Al-Abdi Alaudinov, who reinvented himself by fighting in Ukraine and now makes regular appearances on Russian TV as a war hero. Then there are also less glamorous, more dangerous figures, more unstable ones both for Chechnya and Russia. The bureaucrats and oligarchs whose loyalty is to money, not to Kadyrov family name. This is not just a regional transition, it is a Kremlin-level crisis brewing under the very surface. Kadyrov's death or even semi-retirement would tear open questions Putin does not want to answer. Can Moscow maintain the control without the fear machine that Ramzan built? Or will the region return to the instabilities that required billions in the first place to silence? It looks like we might know soon enough. To finish everything, let's briefly talk about probably the first ever cancellation of Navy Day parade in modern Russia's history. For many years, the country celebrated its Navy Day with grandeur, flags waving, warships line up in majestic symmetry, and Putin just strolling around like a tsari inspecting his floating toys. But not this year. In 2025, the Kremlin cancelled Navy Day parades in St. Petersburg, Kaliningrad, and even Vladivostok, like thousands of kilometers away from the front lines. And the excuse? Well, security reasons, as you would expect. Translation: we are terrified of drones. Welcome to the age where a handful of buzzing remote-controlled aircraft are enough to send an entire imperial ceremony into hiding. Let's pause here for a second. You know things are bad when even Putin's favorite PR spectacle, becomes a liability. This is a man who stages amphibious landings just to wave at the camera. Cancelling a parade in his own hometown while physically being there is the equivalent of a dictator admitting he is no longer in control of the skies above his head. And all of this, mind you, happened while Ukrainian drones were flying across Russian airspace, hitting oil depots, airfields, and sometimes just for fun, turning military targets into fireworks. The symbolism could not just be richer. Russia's naval power, once considered a pillar of its global might, is now so damaged and humiliated that it has to hide from celebration. In the Black Sea, Ukraine has sunk Russian warships, destroyed logistical hubs in Crimea, and forced the fleet to retreat all the way to Novorossiysk, like some kind of a defeated pirate crew. In June, Ukrainian drones launched an operation codenamed Spiderweb Pautina that targeted bomber bases as far as the Arctic. Let that sink in. Ukrainian drones, launched from regular commercial trucks, managed to hit Russian top-secret and heavily guarded strategic bombers. No wonder the Kremlin would rather quietly shut down a parade than risk just one more humiliating explosion in front of the cameras and pretty much in front of the whole world, at least who is still watching. Because they cannot afford simply any more losses. According to Ukrainian side, the whole 33% of Russia's Black Sea fleet now just became submarines. But here is the twist. Putin still showed up in St. Petersburg. He walked into the historic Admiralty building and delivered the usual Navy will rise stronger monologue. All while air defenses were scrambling and flight paths around St. Petersburg were being shut down like it is some kind of a wartime. Which, of course, it is, even in St. Petersburg. The illusion of invincibility is slowly wearing off. The carefully curated image of a strong, proud Russia is being eaten alive by the reality of Ukrainian ingenuity and Putin's impotence. And he knows it. That's why the warships stayed in harbor. That's why the fireworks were cancelled. Because the only things lighting up the Russian sky this year are apparently Ukrainian drones. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. In case you missed our Monday episode of Thank God It's Monday podcast, it is already uploaded. Please go ahead and check it as well. If you want to support my work, there are links down below. For example, my Patreon, where you can see these episodes in early access. Literally the best way to support our work here on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
To sway, we do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.